look at my blog, almost every time I talk about True Gardens, this is possibly the most beautiful spot in New York City for me. And Central Park has a lot going for it because it's really big and it's got all this corporate support, but it doesn't have that. You know, it doesn't have the hands-on. You know, the people made it, and it's just so beautiful. And that people come here to meditate makes so much sense. So now, in the past, I've come up here to cook, to show how cooking from scratch with no packaging. The last time I threw out my garbage at home was 2019. So I'm on my 5th year on one load of garbage. And now it took me years and years to get there because it was 8 or 9 years ago when I first challenged myself to go for 1 week without packaged food. And that was really hard. I did 2.5 weeks that time. And then from then, I had 6 months of very bland food because I didn't know how to cook from scratch. It was my first time ever cooking beans from dry, soaking them, putting them on the stove. And then I went from emptying my garbage once a week, and if I went to a farmer's market, I was like, I don't know, I didn't know collard greens from spinach. I didn't know what anything was. And so I had to learn that stuff. And so gradually I learned, instead of buying vinegar, I learned how to chop apples, put it in, and make vinegar. So now I don't have to get vinegar in containers. And all these other things, like I learned bit by bit how to stop getting junk and stuff that was polluting in favor of stuff that's local and fresh. And my expectation was it would cost more, it would take longer time, and it would be less accessible for people who aren't living right by a farmer's market like me. And all those are exactly wrong. What costs time and money is not knowing how to cook. Now, so what I want to show is, so I want to show that because that's what I like to show. But this time I also want to talk about co-ops. This had been last week when we got rained out, but my mom was going to come. When I was a little baby, my mom and my dad helped form first a buyers club, which then became a co-op, which then became folded into this food co-op in Philadelphia where I grew up, which is a mainstay of the community. And a lot of people think when they hear co-op, they seem to think, oh, that's expensive. Maybe they know about the co-op in Brooklyn, which is kind of, I haven't been to it, but I think it's kind of fruitful. And I'm going to explain, again, exactly the opposite of what they expect. So I'm going to talk about why I came up here, why I'm coming up here different this time, and the seed that I want to plant. If you guys are willing, I don't want to force anything on anyone, but on upping, like taking the next step from here. So I'm going to leave that hanging. If you have questions along the way, let me know. But for now, I'm going to make a stew and talk while it's cooking. Also, this is, actually I'm curious, what's a typical electric bill someone pays up here?
$60, $70. Mine is usually 40 to 50.
Okay, I don't get electric bills. My apartment is off the grid.
Oh, yeah.
So I was up this morning. I didn't bring my solar panels here today, but I got my battery that I charged from the roof. Now that took me a long time to reach where unplugging the fridge. So I unplugged my fridge. I'm in my 3rd year without unplugged. And then that led me to see what else do I not need? What else do I not need? What I picked up is that people seem to think, as I would have, I thought avoiding packaged food. I got great food. Food is flowing from all over the world into New York City. Why wouldn't I get the best stuff in the world? But nothing gets fresh. And I expected cost would take longer, and I expected my entire journey of sustainability would be 1 week of trying to avoid packaged food. I thought for sure I'm not going to like it. For sure I'm going to give it up. And then I could just tell everyone, oh, the cure is worse than the disease. I tried. It's too hard. I don't want to do it. But I found out that I liked it more, and I kept going and going and going. So I'm 10 years in and just getting started. And when a lot of people, I think when they hear not using a fridge, I think they hear losing something of modernity, something in life. But I'm less dependent. So what it feels like to me is freedom and liberation. So when people talk about how much, like the pollution, they feel guilty not causing it. I do too, but I also feel like it's great. It was one day I woke up and I was like, I remembered that I canceled my account with Con Ed, and I went and checked, and I haven't gotten a bill for Con Ed. That was after a year after I went to my circuit and I disconnected it. But I was afraid, like, what if something breaks? I wanted a safety net. So after a year, I was still getting $20 a month just for being connected, even though I didn't use any power. It was 0 kilowatt hours for 12, 13 months. And I was like, I called them up, and I was like, if I cancel it, how does that work out? Because we just cancel it, it'll turn off at midnight. And I said, all right, what if it breaks? And he said, you can turn it back on, and we'll have it on 24 hours later. So I still have a safety net if I could reconnect. And he said, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I have solar. And he thought I meant some community solar thing that still goes to the grid. And he goes, it's not going to work. I was like, I'm all right. So he was like, I advise you not to do this. I said, turn it off. And I was kind of scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I had to learn what to do if there's 3 rainy days in a row. What do I do? And I had to figure that stuff out. So I do plug in, if I need to, I'll plug in my phone and my computer at work, but not at home. But I don't go extra. Like, I don't use extra power there. So, anyway, back to cooking.
Wait a minute, when you say I don't use extra, what do you do?
I don't bring this to the office and plug it in.
Oh, I see.
Only because I'm doing what I used to do outside my home, but in the home, it's no power.
Okay.
Or only solar power. And I had this article that on Ars Technica, and it was the most read article about what I was just talking about. And people are like, oh, he's just using extra stuff there. So then I haven't plugged in. I plugged in once in NYU in, I think, September. And the last time before that was, I think, March or April. So I'm even not even plugging in there, even though by my rules I can. But people were all making like, oh, he's cheating. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to trick anyone. So, like I met someone for coffee, and I didn't want anything, but the place said, you must get something. I was like, oh, fine. So I was like, what do you have vegan on the menu? And they said, all they had was miso soup. So I was like, okay, I'll get miso soup. So they bring out the soup, and it's in a plastic cup, disposable cup. I'm like, oh. So I have to, now once I caused it to happen, I have to take that home and put it in my trash. Mm-hmm. Even though it was outside the home. I'm not trying to make it look like I'm trying to not hurt people on the receiving end of it. Mm-hmm. All right, so here we have mung beans. These are like $2 a pound when I buy them in bulk. But that's dry. So if that were in a can, it'd be like 25 cents. And I don't know if you can see, but they're like starting to sprout.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've learned is that if I want greens in the middle of winter, I can sprout legumes. So mung beans sprout pretty quickly, so mung beans are healthy on their own. If I sprout them, they become fresh greens, even in the middle of winter. So I just soak let me say what I'm gonna do, is that what I learned to make a soup, a stew that works every time, is I take a legume, I can name you 20 legumes, like mung beans and split peas and black-eyed peas and soybeans and chickpeas, and there's a lot of kinds of beans. Any of them will work, that just make a different type of flavor. So I soak them, I'm gonna put them in here, then a green leafy vegetable, and then something starchy. So I brought a carrot and I brought a sweet potato, but it could be a squash. The greens could be spinach, it could be it could be collard greens, it could be, this is collard greens. It could be chard, it could be spinach, it could be broccoli, it could be Brussels sprouts, it could be cabbage. And cabbage, we're getting the season when cabbage is like the cheapest, and it doesn't need any refrigeration. It can stay there for these will stay dry for years. So I shop for them very rarely. Likewise with these are good for months. And the greens I have to shop for a bit more, but when it gets into the wintertime, cabbage, which I also ferment so I can get sauerkraut, but I can ferment all these other things too. And so I don't have to shop that much. In fact, that's a question that confused me for a while, was do you have to shop more? But it's the opposite, not refrigeration. frozen pizza and ice cream, they need refrigeration. This doesn't need refrigeration. This will be good, not a year, but like definitely for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So I can shop more, but I don't have to shop. So I just realized I forgot the nutritional list. But I got here some seeds and nuts and the spices over here. Okay. So if I put in a legume, green leafy vegetable, and a starchy thing, and I put them in the pressure cooker, that always works. It always tastes good. And I'll do it with this, but if I did it with black beans instead, it would be different, but basically the same process. Alright, so I'm going to chop up. And I'm doing now, so this is really fun. Normally I put that in the compost, but here the chickens are going to go eat it, I guess. Alright, so right now I'm going to make enough for, I don't know, this is just how much I bought. But if I want to, I can fill this all the way up and I can make, for me, 5, 6, 7 meals at once. And then so the next time I eat, I just have it ready. Now, I'm by myself, so I have friends who do like me, and they have roommates that are with them, and so I don't have any what's the word? Economies of scale. I have to cook everything myself, clean everything myself. So on the one hand, I can choose to do it how I want, so that's a benefit. But on the other hand, I have to do everything myself. So I think it's a wash in terms of if you do it solo versus whether you do it with family. When I was a kid growing up, the parents had to work. We were latchkey kids. So every day we came home, and there was a note saying which kid's turn it was to cook, and we had to cook dinner. So when the grown-ups came home, dinner was ready. Now I don't have that. I have to cook everything myself. But I grew up cooking, just not from scratch. And I think net would be easier with someone else. Overall, it would be less work, more saving money, more saving time. So I think I have the freedom to do it how I want. Now, if you say you have a partner, a spouse, who doesn't like fresh, delicious food and wants to eat out all the time, well, if they have different values than you, that's going to be difficult. I don't know what to do if you live with someone with different values than you. I can't help with that. But I know that I've also talked to a lot of people who didn't do this and then did it, and they didn't ask, they just did it, and then people got on board. Like on my podcast, I had this like super hardcore Trump supporter, big time meat eater, and I had him over to record the podcast at my place, and I made this, and I didn't even think about it. The first thing he said when he took a bite was, "I can't tell there's no meat in here." And I'd forgotten that that would be an issue for someone. So he and I become friends, and he invited me out to go bike riding on Governor's Island because he lives downtown, and it brings people together. But if you have someone who just wants to pollute, you might have a little trouble there. But I think you might want to fix that problem. But I think this would help. So some people don't know that you can eat all the stalks, and a pressure cooker hopefully it'll get all the way through because this is just picked, so it's pretty fresh. It's also cold out. It's fall and chilly, which means that the pressure cooker will take a little longer to cook because it has to heat up the water more, so it uses a bit more energy. Now, when you aren't connected to the electric grid, I live in a building that I have to climb 11 flights up to go to the roof. I have to carry this plus the solar panels up and then sit and let it charge for a couple hours. So I value the energy that I use. I can't take for granted because I have to earn it. It's a lot easier for me if I just plug it into the wall. That would be less calories burned, but I know that at the other end, someone's displaced from their land to get to that fuel underneath, to get to the minerals underneath. The pollution is going to get into people's lungs, and everyone can say, well, it's not my fault. Well, that's right. It isn't our fault. We were born into a world that's polluted, that has all the systems set up to make it easy to pollute, and it's totally not fair that it's hard for us. It's harder to not pollute than to pollute. But like any addiction, you're the only one who can get yourself off that addiction. And so to me, this is freedom. And I could only complain, and trust me, I'm happy to complain.
Me too.
But ultimately, I'm not going to wait around for other people to solve problems that I'm frankly contributing to. And I like Teddy Roosevelt had this phrase in his autobiography. He's quoting someone else whose name I forget. Do what you can with what you got where you are. And that simplifies things pretty well. It's not saying do what you can't. It's not saying go somewhere and do it somewhere else. And so it's very liberating to me to, like in the news, they talk about dependence on foreign oil. And they always make it as if the foreign part is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The dependence part is the problem.
Right.
If you're dependent on anything, that's, you're addicted. No one can, I mean, my stepbrother went to state prison because, I don't know the full story, but what he says is he went to the doctor, he had an accident on the motorcycle, they gave him OxyContin, he got addicted, then came the other stuff, and that's totally not fair. They told him it would be safe. And so I don't talk about addiction lightly. And like, there was some time when anyone who lent him money, like no one would talk to him for a long time. And, but no one, when you're on something, can go through withdrawal for you. And if you don't, if we don't, then it'll only get worse. And the crazy thing about it is that when you're addicted to something, maybe I should just say dependent on something, it's always people that you love and near you who get hurt before you do. So all that, like when I got off the train and there's litter everywhere, that's here, it's everywhere. I ride my bike, I take Metro North outside the city and I ride my bike everywhere along the road, far from the city. There's no one around. And there's litter everywhere. That's why I try to avoid it. And what no one gets is that if you really stick with it, on the other side of all the work is freedom and joy and ultimately love. It's hard to love someone that you litter their world. Because then you're like, oh, I want to step away. I'm talking too much. Is this interesting?
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah. So this is fresh water?
Yeah, fresh water, filtered water. So going back to what you were saying about the addiction and the dependency and wanting to do good, but you're so accustomed to having just things there.
Yeah.
You were saying about it's like a drug. Yeah, it's true. And then the drug dealer, which is like these companies like Con Edison, you can get it any time. So it's hard for you to try to change if the service is always there.
That's how they want it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how they want it.
All right, so I put in here, I'll put the spices in afterward. It's possible that I put in, it takes a certain amount of energy, and this is stored energy. So if I put in too much and it's too cold, it could run out before it's finished cooking. So I hope it makes it. So I'll turn this on.
Or it's at 99.
It's the 100 in the middle. So
Okay.
99. So this shows how much power, how much energy is in it, and how long it has, how long it would take to run out of power.
So Josh, you want to take it into the greenhouse because in the greenhouse it's warmer than it is out here.
No, that one, it's the temperature of the water, really.
Okay. All right.
But now, I see. All right, so this should turn on, pressure cook, and then I think probably 6 minutes. Okay, so that was all the prep time necessary.
Okay.
When this is out, then it's ready to eat, But I'll put a little stuff. I'll put some. Okay, so that the 3 beeps means it's starting.
Yeah, that was quick.
That just means now it's sending. Now it's starting.
Okay.
Are you guys? Do you guys use pressure cookers?
I have that.
All right. If you don't use a pressure cooker, I highly recommend a pressure cooker. It's faster. It keeps everything in. So what happens is, normally you have to boil beans. If you cook it, what a pressure cooker does is it keeps the pressure in and lets you go to a higher temperature than just boiling. So it cooks faster. And because it's sealed, it keeps all the nutrition in. And what happens, so right now it's sending energy in. It's heating the water up. The water will boil. When the water boils, it creates pressure. And at a certain point, there's a little plug here that goes up, and that means that the pressure is on. And then the clock, right now I think it just says on.
Oh, then the clock's on.
So when the pressure gets up and this goes up, this will get locked, and then the timer will start going down. As it turns out, because this doesn't provide as much, it doesn't provide energy as fast as the wall does, so it takes a little bit longer. It'll be faster if you plug it into the wall. Like unplugging your house from the grid, that's advanced. That took years to get to, although I didn't have any role models. As far as I know, I'm the only one. Half the world lives in cities, and I'm not sure how many people, I don't know of anyone who's unplugged their apartment in a city. Mm-hmm. So I'm the first of billions. But even if we don't completely disconnect from the grid, even if you just go a little bit, if you don't need a fridge, or if your fridge, if you can go without them, like the refrigerator is one of the things that people think they need 24/7. If you need 24/7, then the power grid has to supply 24/7, which means the power grid has to have huge redundancies, which means even if you wanted to power it off with something like solar or wind, you have to still have coal plants and fossil fuel plants and nuclear plants just in case. So it produces huge amounts of pollution just in case. But I could go for a year without an electric grid. So if we could just not need, if you could handle a day without power, without warning, we could drop our power grid by I saw the number somewhere, it's like half in terms of what we need to, in terms of pollution, in terms of what we need to pay in taxes, in terms of national security risk. Because the more we need it 99.99% uptime, the more there's lots of little points where if someone bombed it or something like that, that would be huge damage. Or if a storm knocks it out. So if a storm knocks me out, I'm fine for a while.
I'm glad that you're mentioning what it takes to bring energy to our homes, because I think that I started to find out the system when I was in my 30s. I didn't care to ask because it was always there, and I think it was in my 30s where I realized the issue was having power supply to your house and everything that it was affected and who it harmed. I had no idea, so I'm glad that you're saying that, because I think someone can be 50 and not know exactly what power companies are doing to the environment.
I went through a big shift.
Because it's just so automatic.
If you had talked to me before my experiment going with the voting package food, if you had said, what about sustainability? I'd say it sounds important, but I don't know. What am I supposed to do? I didn't cause the problem. Governments, corporations caused it. They should fix it, not me. And besides, the plane was going to fly anyway. I can't. It's not fair. And if you told me, well, people are dying because of your pollution, I'd be like, what is making me feel guilty have to do it? How's that going to help anything? I can't do anything. And then the more that I learned what no one told me, and I still to this day have not heard this message, except from you guys, is that it's better. But if you try to live, if you don't try, it's like if you live in one culture and you try to, if I lived in Tokyo and I feel like I want a bagel every day, that's really hard because they don't make bagels there. So I gotta find extra stuff. But if I just switch and live like Tokyo and get whatever they get there, then it's easy. Likewise, if someone from Tokyo tries to live in New York and they try to get whatever they onigiri or whatever, then they're gonna have a really hard time. It's really hard for them. But if you live in Tokyo, you live in New York like New York, it's easy. If you try to live sustainable in an unsustainable world, in a culture that promotes pollution, that's hard until you make the shift. But now I've done enough of these and worked with enough people that I have enough people around me that now I'm sowing downstream instead of upstream. Because I live in my local world. It's still hard, but it's much easier. So, all right, now I want to talk about co-ops. When I was a kid, actually, any questions?
How long does this thing run? The echo flow?
This,
How much power is it? How many hours?
people ask me that a lot. It works the other way around. It's how much sunlight is there, and then what do I get to do based on how much energy I get to get.
So it depends on sunlight.
Yeah, so this should fit. If I want to cook one load, this battery should give me enough for one load and a little bit more. But if I just want to power my computer and my phone, it's several days. But
This takes more than one.
heating stuff up is a lot. That takes a lot of power. Oh my god, a toaster? Toaster is like destroys this thing. It uses a lot.
Really?
And when I see someone, when I first learned that, I was like, I put in the toaster. I'm like, oh, no big deal, because the toaster's what, $20 to buy it? I mean, I got mine used, and I'm like watching this thing going. I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna run out of power or energy, and so now, I mean, I don't use a toaster. The seeds from this, I got to toast. So I go through, but they also stay, like I dry them out, and then they're fine for a while. And then when I go through enough of these to run the toaster once, if I have like 4 or 5 sunny days in a row. So I can, when there's like a lot of sunny days in a row, I'm drunk with power. I'm like, oh, I can make toast, I can do all this sort of stuff.
Because it's cold and yeah, so we can keep warm. So Josh, how come you don't put some of those peppers in with the soup?
When I cook it,
Yeah.
because this has crispy and this has flavor.
Oh, okay.
So if I put the onion in here, it just kind of disappears because the pressure cooker cooks things pretty well. So the nutrition will be there, but the flavor won't. So
I don't know if that's like 100% true because I add pepper, cilantro, onions, and garlic into my soup, and you can taste it.
all right, you can go either way. I like to put stuff in afterward because I like
bold flavor, not just.
like
Okay.
I want crispiness,
I see.
and I want like these peppers have a bit of spice to them, and so I want a spice in the bite.
Okay, I get it.
But I could go either way. And onions I'm always going to put in on top.
Yeah, I love onions on top. So even if I put those spices in, let's say the soup, I like to have like chopped onions on top because I like the way it feels, the crunchiness and the flavor versus it being inside the soup.
All right, so how many people here listening to me talk were thinking things like, well, he lives down in Manhattan. He's got all that stuff. He's privileged. He's got access that other people don't. You can, good, because
But I know about you, so maybe you want to ask somebody else who doesn't really know about you.
well, even
I'm
When I-
surprised, but see, there you go.
when I say this to people down there, they say to me, "Oh, you can do it," but up there they can. This too.
Yeah.
But up there they can't do that because they don't have the farmers market that you do. They don't have all the stuff that you do, and they haven't been here. So I say, good thing you didn't tell them that, because then they might think they can't do what they're already doing. But also, when I was a kid growing up, this is something. All right, let me get my notes. Something that, I wanted my mom to be here because when I was a kid growing up, she and my dad helped. They went to a neighbor, and a neighbor went to them and said, we're already operating a food cooperative, and they joined it. And the deal was that there were roughly 10 families, and each family would put in their order. I think it was like on Wednesday, and when it was your turn, you drove down to South Philly at 4 in the morning, and you you went to the distribution center and you ordered a week's worth of food for 10 families. So that's like a full carload. And then you brought it back up, and then a different volunteer would take it in the church and divide it up into who gets what, and then everyone would get it. And then, so because they were going at 4 in the morning, they got the best choice. Because they were buying for 10 families at once, they got lower prices. Because you only had to go once every 10 weeks, it was less time. If you ever work with engineers, you may have heard engineers say, quality, time, price. Pick 2 out of 3. You don't get all 3. But this thing got all 3. It was lower price, higher quality, less time, plus community. So it's better in every way. Now, a lot of people say, Josh, I can't go to a co-op because that's like, they view it as like free food. And it took me a long time to realize this disconnect that they didn't grow up. So after the divorce, my mom was homeless for a while. She would never say this until very recently. Because she was like, Josh, I always had a roof over your heads. But I was always staying with friends, we were bouncing around. And when she eventually got a house, it was $5,000 for the entire house because it was on Rockland Street. Rockland Street was, it was the ghetto. And Rockland Street in Philadelphia. So this author, I met this guy who, it turns out he's a best-selling author, Matt Johnson. And it turns out he grew up like a block away from us. And he's African-American, and he wrote in his book, in the ghetto there is a building, and that was a block away from where I grew up. So I quote him to say it's a ghetto, because some people are like, Josh, you can't say that. But we were, like in the summer, at the top of the block, the city would give out welfare sandwiches. And that was my chance to get the pink bologna and the spongy bread and the
cheese is so
the government
good.
cheese, yeah. And the neighbors would get the government cheese and the government peanut butter, which I would eat like tons because it had all sugar. It tasted like candy to me. And at the bottom end of the block was where the neighbors told my mom, don't let Josh down at that end because that's where the gangs are. But we were almost the only white people on the block. And what the gangs meant for me was not, I was tempted because I was too young at that time. That meant I was excluded. Because they weren't like, hey, would you be in our gang? That meant I was the one who was punched. I was the one who was beaten up. I was the one who was mugged. I was mugged over and over and over again. And this is something that this sustainability stuff has resurfaced for me in my life of how when I would tell people I have Ivy League degrees, they're like, you don't understand. And it never occurred to me that they didn't see me as someone who was beaten up, who was excluded. Now, in the rest of the world, maybe it's the other way. And it's been like that for most of my life since then. But in that time, when I grew up, my formative years, I was on the outside. And I had like the wrench in my face being like, give me your bike. And that was very unpleasant. And only once I started remembering these parts of my childhood, not remembering, but sharing, did I realize that for me, a co-op means, a lot of people think that's for people who have extra time, extra money, don't have to worry about taking care of their kids. But in my life, that's what you did if you didn't have time and didn't have money and had 3 kids to raise. And that's what, so to me, a co-op is the opposite of a food desert. Does everyone know what a co-op is?
Yeah.
So a co-op is when, like if you go to Whole Foods, that's Jeff Bezos owns that. And they want to make a profit, and they want to sell you the most profitable stuff. So that's going to be packaged stuff, not healthy, that's like very processed, and it's generally going to be to
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I have not eaten at Chipotle in 10 years, but when I see someone has left a napkin sitting there, I go in and I take it because I can't put it back in the thing. So I have not bought this. How do I avoid getting stuff? Buying stuff that's going to become litter is I get stuff that other people are going to throw away, but as far as I can tell, it's really good. So I can smell this.
I
Oh,
smell it too. It smells good.
yeah, and it tastes good too.
You didn't even put seasoning in it.
So the seasoning's over. It doesn't need seasoning, but I still put seasoning in. So to me, food cooperative is where the people who shop there also own the store. So the motive switches from being how much money can we make off of people to how can we get the best quality, at the best price, with the best selection. So we grew up eating healthy food, and it was cheaper. Like when we were kids, I loved McDonald's. That's like we wanted to go to McDonald's, and that was a rare treat because that's expensive. And I know people say to me, "Oh, single mom in food desert with 3 jobs and 3 kids, she can fill her kids' bellies with $1 with more at McDonald's than with fresh fruits and vegetables," which is wrong. Now, if you don't have access, that is an issue. But if you do have access, vegetables, now you may have to get frozen and stuff. You may have to get some packaged stuff, but it's still cheaper than McDonald's. But we wanted McDonald's, but we couldn't get it because that was expensive. What was cheaper was fresh from all the way downtown. So the seed that I want to plant is that what kills me is food deserts and when people don't have access, that's a serious issue. And so that means that now this is starting. Yeah, so now it's starting the 6 minutes.
Okay.
So up until now, it's just warming up. It hit pressure, and now it's cooking. So in 6 minutes, it'll be ready. So I didn't run out of energy. So Whole Foods, that's just one. Bodegas, they want to be the only one local, and then they want to push everything out. But it's really bodegas get their stuff from Frito-Lay and Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and that stuff's profitable. And Modelo, and they want to squeeze everything else out. They don't want bananas. They don't want this stuff there. They don't want this here, because this is freedom. This is the opposite of that. A co-op is different. A co-op is the people in the neighborhood put it together. And so if you can get a co-op going, then you can get fresh stuff from local places, but also you guys have Hunts Point much closer than where we were to South Philly. Also, it turns out that the city has programs where if you get enough people together, they will bring the food to you from Hunts Point.
Wait, you say that we can start a food? I thought you had to have like special blah 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 blah.
So you get a few people together, and you can get a buyers club, and then you can do what my parents did, and then if you get like 10 people together, just take turns and go to the buyers club. Go and one person gets it all, and then another person will divide it up. But the city, if you get enough people together, they will take it. They will bring it to you and drop it off. You just need a drop-off place, which could possibly be here, but for it could be a school or church or something like that. But this is the seed that I want to plant. And if you guys don't want to do it, that's your business.
No.
But if you get what my parents did was first to start with a few families, then more families, and then that got enough to get a co-op. And at first the co-op didn't have a shop for them. It was still people having to come together one day a week. And then finally they got enough to rent a place. And then that place, I can't tell you what in my heart, that co-op, I'm getting choked up. What that means to me. Because I didn't appreciate it as a kid, because the welfare peanut butter was sweetened and I didn't get to eat it. But my parents would only get, it had to be peanuts, and that's it. Or salt, peanuts and salt. But not sweet. And so we used to get the healthy stuff. And when I was a kid, I was like, when I went to friends' places, I know the first time I ever had a Twinkie, I ate the whole box. I was like, because I can still remember the crinkly plastic, and then my teeth piercing, the soft stuff, and that stuff isn't baked. It's like chemical reaction. But as a kid, it was like sweet, and I was like, oh. And Doritos, just like have one, finish the bag.
Yeah.
And I loved being at friends' houses because they would have that stuff and we didn't. But as I got older, there's not enough money in the world for me to get a Twinkie. Not enough money in the world. It's like disgusting, and it's I mean seriously disgusting. Then fresh. I used to love Ben and Jerry's, but now again, not enough money in the world for me to eat that. It used to be really sweet, and apples were kind of sweet, but not as good. Now to me, Ben and Jerry's is like disgusting, overly sweet. It's like not interesting to me at all. Apples are sweeter to me now than Ben and Jerry's used to be. So I have more sweetness in my life with less sugar. And now broccoli is as sweet as apples used to be. Like broccoli stalks to me are like candy. And my ex-girlfriend, we used to cabbage. When you, like the outer part is like soft leaves. When you get to the inner part, it's like crunchy. And if you get like I like the good purple stuff. It's light. It's got a lot of flavor. So it feels to me the way Doritos used to. So we used to have our little language, which was I'm gonna go out and buy a bag of chips, and then I'm gonna go get some cabbage. And sometimes I'd walk in my apartment, and I'd walk out, and I'm like, I have a handful of cabbage leaves, and I'm just nibbling on them, and I forgot that other people don't see that as normal.
Yeah.
So my doorman was like, "What?" I'm like, "Chips." Oh, and I had to explain it. But cabbage is like dirt cheap. It's really cheap. Plus, I can make it into sauerkraut and have greens throughout the summer, throughout the winter. So all of this to me, I hope you're getting the idea of. I trust your sense of passion, the fun, the indignation, and to the world. It's like choose. They want this is a choice, and a lot of this comes down to. On the one hand, there's comfort, and the other hand, there's struggle. And if addiction means you're looking at just what's right in front of you, and it's very difficult to look past the present moment, and then you're always going to choose comfort. Josh, I don't want to deal. Look, if it's in summer, I want to air condition whenever I want. I don't want to. If you don't have power, I can't. I don't like that. But where does that path go? The comfort leads to dependence. It leads to pollution. It leads to, and when I'm polluting your world, and you're helpless to prevent it, which could be here, it could be all the way around the world. I don't want to connect with you. I want to isolate. So it's done.
No way.
So I'm not gonna